Hi everybody, it's Roy again from Eviction Properties, and I'm talking about selling a rental property, aren't we?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a common thing that's coming up at the moment. A lot of landlords are deciding that it's sort of the end of the road for their property investment. What do? How do they sell a property? They've got a tenant in situ. What are the big pitfalls, Andrew? What sort of questions are you getting from landlords that are looking to sell?
Yeah, so I suppose the biggest thing is obviously they are aware that they've got the tenant currently in the property. They don't want to risk necessarily upsetting the tenant, but of course they do need to forward on their own future plans. I suppose section notice. Big question. Yeah.
Massive changes at the moment. So section 21 notice, the no fault eviction notice, been around for many, many years. Slightly contentious with sort of certain groups out there at the moment, but the main changes that have happened pre-COVID, it was 2 months notice to be given to a tenant for them to vacate. At the start of COVID, that increased to 3 months. It wasn't a major panic for people, but it was a sort of added stress to landlords that wanting their properties back. And then more recently, the government have announced that it's now a 6 months notice. So, if you're a landlord and you've got a tenant in a property and you've decided now is the time to sell, we've had a couple of people that are, due to the economic climate with work and so forth, have decided that now's the time to take a bit of early retirement. So maybe, we've got one in particular, £140,000 property. If he cashes that in, there's no mortgage outstanding on it. That's a nice little nest egg for him. But the biggest concern for him is the notice period. So, biggest things we're finding at the moment. So with this, Andrew, tenants in situ, they don't really particularly want to move out. So what can we do as an agent to help the tenant, but also help the landlord at the same time?
Okay, so on a few of the properties that we've currently got for sale that have tenants in the property, we'd first approach the tenant to see if they perhaps want to buy the property. And that has happened a few times. Tenants may well have been saving to buy their first home or another home after they've moved off a rental. And of course, if they've enjoyed their time at the property, then it makes sense for them to, if they're able to buy it. So that's the first approach. Second approach is to reassure the tenants that we'll do our very best to try and find a replacement investor buyer for the property so they can remain there. And of course, if we get the price right in terms of the yield return for an investor, that's an attractive proposition. Tenants are then reassured that they can remain in the property. And for us, once the actual deal's gone through, then we can simply serve Section 48 notice, I think it is, just notifying the current tenant of a change of landlord.
So it's quite easy to do. I think as long as you're doing everything correctly, we all sit there and we watch these programmes on TV, don't we? Slum landlords and whatnot. But I think the biggest issue is that people aren't doing it correctly. They're not approaching it right. And I think this is where, as an agent, with our experience, 23 years, 33 years, that's massively helping. I think a lot of it comes down to the relationship. So the reaction from a tenant when a landlord's got to sell, a lot of the time will come down to the relationship that we've built with the tenant, I think, isn't it, if we've looked after them?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we had another landlord yesterday who's looking to serve notice and sell the property, again for the reasons that Roy said. I spoke to the tenant at length yesterday. We have re-registered them as an active tenant to try and find another property. And the comment I had was that we really hope we can find through you guys again, because you've been nothing but great during the time that we've been in the property, which has been over the last 3 years. So that's a good recommendation, I think. I
think so too. And if we approach the tenant in that right way, that we want to help them, that we're obviously initially, if they're tied in for a contract, or particularly at the moment with a 6 month notice, that we're going to look after them and try and find a suitable landlord, again, as Andrew said, as long as the yield adds up. Yields. So, sort of slightly going off tangent here, but it's very important that when someone's buying a property for an investment, it has to give a good rate of return. I had a conversation with a client this week, got a property worth around the 350 to 375. It was a family home for them initially. They've moved away and they've had it rented out. We're looking at a rental on it, it's £1,000. Should really be about 1,100, but as they knew the tenants through their daughters, they gave them a bit of a discount on it, which is fine. If that works for each and every landlord, every circumstance is different. But when we were talking about the returns, we were only pulling in at around 3%. What are we talking as a good return?
I think anything north of 5%, probably. Yeah.
I mean, if you watch my landlord investment watch, I talk about sort of picking out local properties that are given a good rate of return, and that's generally where we want to be. I'd say probably 4.7, 4.8 upwards from that, be it freehold or leasehold. So with regards to evicting a tenant, it's a very testing time at the minute, isn't it? And I think quite a lot of conversations I'm having over the last 6 months with landlords is, if you are wanting to get your property back, just let your tenant go. I know you are within your rights to hold them to a contracted period, and I know you've got to serve them notice, and in theory the tenant's got to give you a month's notice in return. But again, that relationship is very important. I think a lot of people would rather let the tenant go, give them a month, there we go, see you later, you found somewhere else, and do it on the tenant's terms as such, rather than getting to the point where the landlord hasn't been able to sell the property, can't get access. That relationship between the landlord and the tenant, doesn't matter what we do, will start to sort of turn sour, won't it?
Will do.
And what, I mean, complications from there, Andrew, if we're having problems getting access and so forth, property goes stale?
Yeah, it will do. I mean, if the tenant isn't allowing reasonable access from time to time, which they should do, but obviously if they know they've been served notice to quit the property and the relationship has gone a little bit sour between the owner, the landlord and themselves, then they're not going to make it easy for us as agents to gain access to the property. Undoubtedly, therefore, the marketing will be delayed and the sale will be delayed. So often I think it's probably better to let the tenant go, property then be vacant, no complications about access for viewings, etc., and hopefully move forward with a successful sale within the timescale that you're looking for.
So I think in a nutshell, it's all going to come down to planning it, talking about it, let's communicate it throughout all parties. Again, if a tenant wants to vacate sooner rather than waiting the full 6 months, it's going to be more beneficial for a landlord to be able to sell a property with a vacant possession rather than shift it across to another landlord, because quite often they'll want a deal on it, I guess.
Yes. Yeah.
And
also, if you've got a vacant property, then with the tenant in situ, of course, if you're selling it to a private buyer, not another investor buyer, then the buyer solicitor is not going to allow them to exchange contracts until the property is vacant. Which, of course, if you've only just served the Section 21 notice on the day of marketing or shortly beforehand, then you could, if a buyer's found that very first day, they won't be exchanging until the tenant's gone. So often it might be better to have it vacant. You've got a hold of the market then. You can sell it to first-time buyers, second-time buyers and investors, hold of the market.
I think it's just working with everybody, isn't it? I mean, we tend to find, again, the feedback that Andrew's mentioned from a tenant, people enjoy working with us, tenants, landlords, everybody. Our experience is, I think, it kind of spreads across the whole spectrum of selling properties just that are vacant and easy, right up to the complicated situation with tenants looking at eviction, possession orders, everything. So we've got the experience of doing sort of pretty much one end of the spectrum, as I say, to the other. We're here to assist you. We want to help you, don't we? And if you're sort of renting a property out through an agent that doesn't do sales, or maybe does do sales, and you're not sure how to approach this, just give us a call. I mean, we'll run through it with you, won't we?
Yeah.
We're quite happy to give you some guidance. It's not legal guidance, it's just experience. You can reach me, 01233 501 601, as you can do Andrew. Thank you for joining us today on our Saturday Sofa Share. And again, just been sort of chatting about selling a rented property. If you need any advice, again, just give us a call, drop me a message. My name's Roy.
And I'm Andrew.
And we will see you next week. Take care. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye.